In terms of villains, the horror genre is rife with the absolute worst of the worst. Although we should naturally empathize with the hero anyway, slashers and supernatural films and the like usually make the baddie utterly despicable, so we root for the protagonist even more. However, there are times where we're tricked into rooting for the villains, either because their true motivations are obscured or they're initially presented as sympathetic people, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 more horror movies that tricked you into rooting for the villain. Number 8, Jill Roberts' Scream 4. It's kind of crazy that we didn't include a Scream movie on the first incarnation of this list, because it's kind of their entire MO to get you rooting for people who ultimately turn out to be the killer. Here, the Legacy sequel tries to establish a new cast of heroes, led by Sidney Prescott's cousin Jill. Being related to the previous protagonist and singled out as the main character of this flick, it's pretty easy for the audience to instantly take Jill's side and remove her from their list of suspects. Hilariously though, and what makes this one such a good example, is that is not only what the movie wants you to think, but what Jill herself wants the other characters in the movie to think as well. See, when it's revealed that Jill is the mastermind of the latest round of murders, her motivation is to essentially be viewed as the next Sidney by the public. So she orchestrates the deaths of everyone so that she'll be the sole survivor, viewed and adored around the world as a courageous victim of Ghostface's assault. And, well, right up until the moment this is revealed, us viewers were probably all ready to buy into that narrative as well. Number 7, Norman, What Lies Beneath. What Lies Beneath isn't a great movie, but it has a twist wild enough to make sure it's still talked about decades after releasing. The Robert Zemeckis joint stars Harrison Ford as a science professor called Norman, who along with his wife Claire become embroiled in a mystery surrounding a missing woman. See, Claire becomes convinced that she's being haunted after seeing the ghost of a woman who she believes is trying to contact her to get justice for her death. Well, it turns out this is actually the ghost of a young woman named Madison who, had an affair with Norman before she died. It turns out that Norman has been keeping a whole load of secrets, in fact, including that he killed Madison and intends to kill Claire as well. Now, what makes this trick work at all is all down to the casting. At the time, especially, nobody really expected Harrison Ford, of all people, to become such a sinister villain. But that's where we end up, with the climax focusing entirely on his attempts to kill and dispose of his wife. Number 6, Steve/Brendan, Fresh. Fresh's ability to trick you into rooting for the villain is so insidious because you just know that you're being tricked. And yet, you still can't help but hope and pray that things will turn out alright. Fresh initially begins as little more than a straightforward rom-com. Sebastian Stan's Steve falls for Daisy Edgar Jones's down-on-her-dating-look character Noah, and the first 20 minutes of the flick follows their romance as it blossoms. Both seem like really likable people, the electric between the actors is electric, and generally, it's just nice and cute to see them getting on. But of course, in the back of your mind, you know that you've put on a horror film to watch, and that genre doesn't quite compute with the words nice and cute. Even then, despite knowing that something about this relationship has to be off, it doesn't make it any less of a betrayal when it turns out that Steve, who is actually called Brendan by the way, is also a twisted surgeon who carves up the meat from kidnapped women and then sells it to high-paying clients while keeping them alive. Yeah, talk about a red flag. Again, you probably knew deep down something like this was coming, but Sebastian Stan is just so likable and the relationship is just so good that you're still tricked into rooting for him until his true intentions are revealed. Number 5, Sandy, Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho might not be one of Edgar Wright's best movies, but it did see the beloved director return to his horror roots to deliver a giallo-inspired period piece that's still well worth a watch. And like all giallo movies, it's the slasher mystery at the heart of Last Night in Soho that informs everything else. And this mystery is glimpsed through hero Ellie, who somehow travels back in time to the 1960s to embody another woman named Sandy every night when she goes to sleep. Now, Sandy is a talented, confident singer who dreams of getting famous and thinks she's found the perfect partner when she falls for Cilla Black's agent. Unfortunately for her though, it turns out that this guy has other ideas and instead kind of becomes Sandy's pimp, as she's forced into sex work and made to leave her dreams behind. And when Ellie's vision later on shows Sandy being stabbed and killed by this man, she tries to track down her killer and bring him to justice all these decades later. So with all of this in mind, it's pretty easy to root for Sandy. With her agency taken away from her and her untimely death, I mean, how could you not? Well, it turns out things aren't quite so simple. See, Ellie didn't quite interpret her vision right, as she didn't see the boyfriend killing Sandy after all, but rather Sandy killing her boyfriend. In fact, it turns out that Sandy killed all of the horrible men that she was made to sleep with, and then hid their bodies in the walls of the apartment that she brought them to have sex with her in. And that apartment just happens to be the exact one that Ellie is currently living in. And even stranger, Ellie's landlord is the older Sandy, and when she finds out that Ellie has discovered her secret, she then tries to drug and kill her to keep it quiet. Number 4, Carrie White, Carrie. Okay, so this one again only counts if you count Carrie as the main villain of the movie, which, considering she does murder a bunch of high schoolers, I reckon is a fair assessment. This iconic flick, of course, revolves around telekinetic high schooler Carrie White, who's bullied relentlessly by her overbearingly religious mother and her classmates. When her tormentors drop a bucket of pig's blood on her during her prom, Carrie finally snaps and uses her psychic powers to burn the school down, killing dozens of students and teachers alike. She then leaves the building, blows up a few cars, and kills her own mother before incinerating her own house. Now, Brian De Palma's film is so good at making you root for the villain here that you genuinely forget that Carrie is the villain. Although she exacted her revenge on the people who made her life miserable, many other people who perished in the prom took no part in the pig blood prank. And even though Carrie is fully aware of this, she's so consumed with unbridled rage by this point that she doesn't seem to care. Number 3, Laura Barnes, Unfriended. In Unfriended, a group of teenagers have a Skype chat exactly 1 year after their classmate, Laura Barnes, took her own life. When the high schoolers notice someone has used Laura's profile to join their chat, they assume it's some kind of horrible prank. However, the gang soon realize that they are actually speaking to the ghost of Laura, and that she's planning to kill them all for making her life miserable. When the group scoff at Laura's threat, she then uses her power to compel them to kill themselves one by one. After watching Laura force the characters to drink bleach or place a curling iron down their throat, it's kind of easy to see her as a monster. But when we learn that Laura's classmates have crashed stolen cars, roofied people, and forced girls to get abortions, it's clear that they are not nice people at all. Throughout the movie as well, Hero, and I use that term lightly, Blair seems to be the voice of reason and the only person who sees Laura as a friend. But in the final moments, we actually learned that Blair also uploaded the video of Laura defecating herself, which is what encouraged her to end her life thanks to the relentless bullying that came from it. So by the time every character has been murdered, you kind of don't feel sorry for any of them save for Laura. Number 2, Norman Nordstrom, Don't Breathe. Don't Breathe begins with a trio of robbers breaking into the house of a man called Norman Nordstrom after they learn it possesses valuables worth $300,000. Since Norman can't see, the criminals believe the operation will be a piece of cake, but little do they know that Norman has adjusted to darkness so well he can easily hold his own against anyone. When the criminals realize the house has no working lights, they actually find themselves running around blind to escape while Norman hunts them down. And because at first you kind of assume that Norman is only defending his home from invading thugs who had no qualms about robbing and hurting someone, blind or not, you are a little bit on his side from the get-go. But when one burglar discovers Norman has a pregnant woman imprisoned in the basement, you instantly see him as a monster. From then on, you just absolutely stop rooting for him and realize this guy is actually a bad piece of work, but it's easy to want to see him teach those robbers a lesson before this. Number 1, May. May, and I've said that too many times in a row, is a horror drama revolving around a woman who suffers anxiety because of a lazy eye. As a young girl, she has a tough life. She's got no mates and feels like an outcast, even though she clearly has so much love to give. And you know what? Who hasn't felt a little like that in their own lives? As a result, you're on her side from the get-go and hope she can grow into a great person and find people who love her. But of course, that's not quite how things pan out, because even after getting her eye fixed and ridding herself of the primary source of her insecurity, she finds out that she's still a little bit, well, unlike other people. With growing urges inside her, the audience still sympathizes with her as she exhibits some, let's say, unsettling behavior. As a result, it's genuinely heartbreaking to watch May's descent into madness as she evolves from killing animals to killing humans in an attempt to take parts of their bodies and Frankenstein together a best friend. When you condense May's actions like that, it's easy to label her as just crazy and psychopathic, but the movie plays it so much more sympathetically. May just wants to be loved, and relating to that tricks you into rooting for her until the point that it's clear that she's definitely beyond saving. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are there any other cool horror movies that tricked you into rooting for the villain that I missed off here? And what did you think of this lot? Let me know, and while you're down there, if you could, please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.